Go. Hello, welcome to another Fantasy Football Predictive Analytics with Rhys Tiller, and we are very excited to have Marcus Mosher with us today. Marcus, how goes it?
It's going, guys. It's been a fun season already, hasn't it?
You know, I always think this, the first month, I'm just like so excited because we go 6 months without football, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, us having a longer season, I'm never against that.
So how long is it going to take you guys to just be out on like Thursday night football? Because I think this Thursday, Panthers Texans, that might be the first game where I'm like, you know what? I probably don't need to have like a 3 hour watch party for that game. It's probably not the most important thing in the world to see every second of that one.
I will watch it all just because I want to watch Davis Mills circle the drain a few times.
Oh
Him,
man.
him against the Panthers defense. I put out on Twitter that if you're in a league that plays defenses, I think the Panthers defense is one of the top ones this week.
I mean, they played well last week against the Saints, so it's probably not a bad call.
Yeah.
But Davis Mills even performed decent against the Browns defense last week.
Yeah.
So wait, you have confidence in Davis Mills this week? Is that what you're saying?
No, I have no confidence. I'm just saying he did not do as bad as expected.
But Tyrod was awesome.
Oh,
Tyrod, call me surprised, call me anything, but Tyrod has been awesome.
And that's the most frustrating thing about that game is Tyrod looks so good. And I think the Texans had a legitimate chance to beat the Browns in that game with the way Tyrod was playing. And I think if you're a fantasy owner, you got to be so disappointed because I think we were going to have Tyrod, I think, at the very least be like a low-end QB1, high-end QB2. And for him basically just to be gone for the next month is very disappointing.
All right, I have a question for both of you all, and this is loaded as all get out. If Tyrod's playing the next month, do you want him or Kirk Cousins or Tannehill the next month if Tyrod's playing?
Tyrod all day long. It's just a rushing upside, right? Like you're going to get 40 rushing yards a game. They're probably going to be throwing a lot in these games as well. I just would rather have Tyrod.
How about you, Rhys?
I'm going to go with Tannehill just because he also has the rushing upside. But Tannehill's rushing upside comes from his rushing touchdowns. He gets like 4 or 5 a year at least, while Tyrod doesn't get as many. And while Tyrod does get as many yards, Tyrod doesn't have anybody to throw to outside of Brandon Cooks, while Tannehill has A.J. Brown and Julio Jones to chuck the ball to.
Yeah, but Tyrod was like 11 to 12 before he left. And Tannehill, I saw this. This shocked me. I saw this on Twitter today. Tannehill was exactly quarterback 24 the last 2 weeks.
Jeez, that's not great.
No.
I got a question for you guys actually about the Titans. I'm gonna already turn this show back to you guys, so it's less work for me, right? I'm gonna ask you guys a question. Derek Henry, over the summer, we were drafting him 7th, 8th in our redraft leagues, right? And we already got the 200-yard, 3-touchdown game from Henry, which we typically don't get until November or December. Kind of after you see 2 games so far, where would you be drafting Derek Henry, just based on what you've seen?
I got him in one league at the 4 hole, and people were thinking I was crazy, and I'd still take him there because McCaffrey's easily number 1. Cook's probably number 2, especially the way he looked yesterday. But Kamara hasn't done anything. Barkley hasn't done anything.
Elliott.
Zeke.
Chubb has done stuff.
But I'm going to go out on a limb. I'll take Henry number 1. Henry has the targets he hasn't had so far. Like I think he already has 10 targets, and his previous high was 31. If Henry gets 3 or 4 catches a game, I want him tops, and I'm not even going to debate anything else. I know there's injury risk.
What's crazy about Henry is he almost seems offensive line proof, right? Like no Taylor Lewan who gets hurt in warmups, going up against the Seattle defense that played really well, like in their last 8 games, and yet he has 200-something yards, 230 yards and 3 touchdowns, and that offensive line is not great, and yet he's still able to make plays. It's just awfully incredible. I don't think we've seen anybody like him in a long time.
Oh my! Before we kick it, Teresa, I have one fantasy sleeper to throw out for everybody. And that's if Ferkser continues to miss. I like Michael Pruitt. and he's bounced around, real athletic, had a couple grabs in that game. Jeff Swaim's really not the guy. He's more of a blocking guy. Pruitt in these deep leagues. I mean, if Max Williams can throw up a big fancy number, there's a lot of hope for a lot of other guys.
Yeah. I know Pruitt's available in like 99% of ESPN and Yahoo leagues. It's a good call by you, Jeff. I like it.
Well, we all know Tannehill loves to throw the ball to tight ends in the red zone. Look at what Jonnu did in the first 4 or 5 games of last year.
Yep.
So do we think A.J. Brown is eventually going to bounce back because he's had 2 games so far? Do you think? I mean, a lot of people who took A.J. Brown earlier in the summer as like wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 before they traded for Julio, they're probably a little worried. Are you guys nervous?
I'm not. I traded a ton for him in a super flex dynasty league. I mean, a ton. But just because I'm always betting on talent. But I'll tell you what I think is even more crazy, just to me. I think Adams is the number 1 receiver in dynasty or fantasy. I mean, I like your Cowboys guys too. You could argue which one.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
They kind of conflict each other, right? If one of them was gone, the other one would shoot way up.
Sure.
But I think the argument is like, who's number 2? Because it could be Tyreek. It could be a number of guys.
Yeah, so let's go through the names really quick. It's Devontae Adams 1, it's Tyreek, and then it's Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. I got another guy that I have to throw in there, and this is somebody who we just talked about this on Locked On Dynasty. His average draft position in startup dynasty leagues is wide receiver 23, and I don't get it. It's Cooper Kupp. Right. Cooper Kupp has been phenomenal the first 2 weeks of the season. He was great last year. Like we ranked him all summer like Jared Goff was going to be his quarterback, and it's not true. Matt Stafford is so much better. Yeah. Why can't Cooper Kupp be 110 receptions for 1,400 yards and double-digit touchdowns this year? Why aren't we ranking him inside the top 7 or 8 dynasty receivers?
Are you asking? Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, I do actually.
It's because he came into the league old. It's the same way that people aren't giving Ridley credit because he came into the league old, and they discount that these receivers, even coming in the league old, they still can have a 15-year career versus a 17-year career.
But doesn't his game seem like it's going to age really well anyways? Because he's not somebody who wins with speed and athleticism, right?
Right. Both of them. I mean, he and Ridley. I just meant you asked the question. I was just saying.
Yeah, you're right.
We have this age bias that we can't get out from behind. You know what I'm saying? And but if you're going down that route, I mean, I think there are a lot of guys. I mean, Metcalf, but people wrote off Pittman after one game and he bounced back.
Yeah.
People are writing off Higgins, or look at Chase in the preseason. I mean, we are like the biggest knee-jerk society in the dynasty world.
That's why you can find a lot of value. That's the great thing about dynasty. If you play with some guys that are a little bit more, they overreact and stuff.
Yeah,
you can get guys like a T. Higgins right now, super cheap, and I think that's a value.
And I'm going to jump ahead of one of Rhys's here, and then I'm going to turn over to him. But I'm buying Zeke all day in dynasty leagues. He and Jacobs both will get out from under this. I mean, you're always going to bet on talent, unless you think Zeke has definitely lost a step, and you may, and I'll let you answer it. But he and Jacobs, I mean, you're still going to bet on talent. They're both, coming out of something into something else.
I think I would be more willing to bet on Josh Jacobs than I would Ezekiel Elliott, because I think Jacobs' problems have been a little bit more about durability.
Yeah.
And Zeke is the problem now is durability is not an issue, but I think it's pretty clear he's lost a step. And then on top of that, there's just a guy in the backfield that's better than him. And I think the new Cowboys coaching staff is not tied to Zeke like Jason Garrett was, right? Like, those guys didn't stand on the table to draft Ezekiel Elliott at number 4. They didn't pound on the table to get him signed to a deal. I think Kellen Moore is just going to play the better guy, and he's going to ride with the guy that's has the hot hand. I think I would be more lenient when it comes to Josh Jacobs than I am to Ezekiel Elliott.
I bet you Zeke is half the price. I bet you Zeke is worth like Myles Gaskin territory.
I mean, I saw some new ADP today where he was still like running back 10, running back 11. And I think Josh Jacobs is like in the 20s. I agree with you. I think we're going to see in the next month that's going to drop by at least 5 or 6 spots.
Yeah. And then I'm a buyer. All I'm saying is when he hits bottom, I'm in.
You're in.
Rhys.
Bigger question is where is that bottom?
Is it a Todd Gurley cliff? Is that what you're asking?
Oh yeah.
Well, here's the thing. If you are somebody who is interested in buying Ezekiel Elliott, it's important to note that the Cowboys absolutely cannot get out of his contract until after the 2023 season. So he is a lock to be there all this year, all next year, and the year after that. So even if he's not being a featured guy, he's going to be part of the game plan. So it's just there's no way that he completely falls off the cliff where they cut him like the Rams did with Todd Gurley. That's just not happening.
And he's a great blocker. I mean, that's the part.
Yes.
We're all dogging him, but the two guys that catch the most grief in dynasty leagues, he and Leonard Fournette, both saved their teams a lot in this early season by being able to block. And we in the fantasy community don't know how to count those in our fantasy scores, but the NFL coaches know that they want him on the field at that time.
And in the case of Fournette, he knows how to hold on to the football, which is something Ronald Jones can't do. So,
well, Jones fumbled one week and missed a block the second.
Yeah,
Tom Brady,
not great.
You're out.
Yeah,
I'll take Fournette. Well, one's also Fournette's also played in much bigger stages than Rojo has before the playoffs this year.
Yeah,
sure.
So, what have been some of the surprises the past 2 weeks in NFL? Players, situations, coaches, anything.
I mean, listen, we're going to talk about the Raiders, so we might as well go ahead and do it right now, right? Like, the Raiders are 2-0. Derek Carr leads the NFL in passing yards by like 75.
128.
128. That's just incredible. I just want to say, after 2 weeks leading the league by 128. I think what's the most surprising, though, is how he's done it. The offensive line, we knew going into the year, was going to be a problem. And basically since the starting training camp, they've lost Richie Incognito, they've lost Denzel Good, they lost their backup, they lost a right tackle who retired, then Alex Leatherwood gets hurt in week 2. Like, that offensive line is completely decimated, and he just carved up the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, that is extremely impressive. And I just think we've seen this really strong progression from Derek Carr over the last 4 years under John Gruden. Every year he's gotten better. He's been throwing the ball more efficiently, further down the field. I don't know if that's going to translate into big fantasy production, but as a guy that could throw for 4,700 yards and 30-something touchdowns, I think Carr's been really good to start the year.
But you also forgot to mention, Rodney Hudson. He left their starting center for the past 10 years. All pro left to go block for Kyler Murray, and the center is the play caller for the offense line. So that was a huge question mark surrounding them. And then
they also lost Gabe Jackson and Trent Brown, the right guard and the right tackle. So that was a lot of turnover on the offensive line and hasn't seemed to bother him at all yet.
So I'm going to ask both of you all this. Is it more a surprise that he's putting up these points or these stats, or who he did it against?
Rhys, you answer that one first. I want to hear your thoughts.
Who he did it against. The Ravens,
yeah.
Sure, they lost Marcus Peters, but they still have Marlon Humphrey. They still have that great secondary, that great linebacking core. And he carved them up for 400-something yards on Monday Night Football. Then he turns around on a short week and goes and carves up the Steelers defense, which was supposed to be top 2 in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Steeler performance was so spectacular. Like, he had those guys on their heels the entire game. Like, Minkah Fitzpatrick had no idea what to do with him. On plays where Minkah would come down and double Darren Waller, he would throw it over the top to Henry Ruggs, or he would find Hunter Renfrow streaking down the seam. Like, the Steelers had absolutely no answers for him at all, and they couldn't get pressure on him. And that's what the most surprising thing is Tom Cable, one of the best offensive line coaches in the league, has got these guys playing well. I'm in shock by how well Derek Carr is playing right now.
Can I interject some color commentary?
Sure.
The ability, so in week 1 against the Ravens, we saw them just pepper Darren Waller at the expense of everybody else. All right. Week 2, Pittsburgh's waiting on him. Okay, we're going to take Waller out. And I have to give the Raiders coaching staff credit for scheming up ways to get Ruggs the ball more on short, intermediate, crossing, out to the wide. they drew up plans just to get Ruggs the ball. So I give them kudos for that.
Yeah, and it actually could have been an even bigger day for Henry Ruggs. There was a 40-yard touchdown he should have had early in the game, but Alex Leatherwood just completely missed the block, and Carr ended up taking a sack. If he would have had that, that would have been the only thing we're talking about this week is Henry Ruggs catching 2 touchdowns and going over 100 yards. But it's just, listen, we make fun of John Gruden all the time for his personnel decisions, and rightfully so. He's a terrible general manager, but he's still a really good coach. He knows how to call game plans and call plays. That was just a masterful performance by him.
But we also mentioned the pressure. TJ Watt was out for half that game too. So you don't know how much of that was real versus fake. But he was not getting pressured at all in the first half, even with Watt in.
No, and that's the thing is they were still moving the ball up and down the field with TJ Watt in the game. So if they can do that against Pittsburgh, and we'll see against Miami. Miami is a really good defense this week. If they can continue that offensive success in week 3, I don't know who's going to be able to stop them this year.
What are the chances? Loaded questions for both of you. Having a Raiders fan and Broncos fan on this. What's percentage that the Chiefs win the division now? I mean, the Chargers are good. The Raiders are decent. The Broncos are decent.
100%.
I'll take go with 95, but yeah.
There you go. Just in case Patrick Mahomes gets hurt. That's a safe bet. The Chiefs are so much better than these teams. That's not to take away from the Raiders or the Broncos. It's just the Chiefs are not going to lose many games. I think that was kind of a fluke that we saw on Sunday night. They're still going to win 12, 13 games. They'll be fine.
Yeah. But even if you remember a few years ago, Matt Moore on Sunday Night Football beat the Packers playing for the Chiefs because Patrick Mahomes was hurt. Even they could still win games if Mahomes is out versus Herbert goes down, Chargers are toast.
They'll be fine. I'm not worried about the Chiefs at all. They're going to be just fine.
Bigger question is, out of the remaining 3 AFC West teams, which one do you think nabs a playoff spot? Or it could be multiple.
So my gut is to say the Chargers because I just think they have the best quarterback of the 3. And that's even talking about how good Derek Carr is. I'll just say one of my biggest takeaways after watching that Cowboy-Charger game, I just got done watching the film, is Justin Herbert is a superstar. I mean, he is absolutely incredible. He is going to dominate this league for a long time because he is just so spectacular. I just have some questions about the coaching staff and the defense, but it's probably the Broncos just because I think they're the most well-rounded team, even though Bridgewater is probably the worst quarterback of the 4. But even Bridgewater is playing really well this season, so it's hard to pick too many holes in that Denver team.
Well, it's pretty easy to play well against the Jaguars and Giants.
It's such a wet blanket right there. Okay, you're right though.
I'm dogging on my own boys, but I would say that the Raiders probably have a decent chance of getting in there, just if Derek Carr keeps up this way. And the Raiders' defense, we haven't even talked about it, stifled Lamar Jackson when it counted, and stuffed the Steelers' defense, Steelers' offense that went rampage against the Bills for the Bills' standards.
It's probably just going to come down to who wins those Raiders-Broncos matchups. I mean, there's probably going to need 9 to 10 wins to make the AFC playoffs. However, those teams decide to win those games, I think it's probably going to tell us a lot. But man, all 4 of those teams have played really well to start the season. That's just an impressive division.
Yeah, the one thing I would throw out that it came up on a previous podcast, Rhys, is, and I want to get your take on this, Marcus. It's a lot easier for a team like Dallas or any NFC team to make the playoffs versus an AFC team. The AFC is deep. You look at the 4 in the West. You look at the South, the AFC South. It doesn't really matter.
3 in the North.
The North has 3 good teams. The East has 2-3 good teams. Yeah, I mean, the NFC looks like
it's top heavy. The NFC East the NFC is very top heavy. Like I think you can make a case like the Bucks and the Rams are the 2 best teams in football, and then I think Seattle's in there. I even think the 49ers are in there. But after that, there's a big drop off. In the AFC, man, you've got 10 teams that are worthy of making the playoffs, if not more. It's going to be really difficult for some of these teams to get to 9 to 10 wins and make the playoffs.
Yeah, well, not unless you're the Titans and you have that schedule, right? I mean, the Titans and having Wentz get hurt even makes it easier for them.
Yeah, the Titans should win that division going away, I would think. The Colts' schedule is brutal the first 5 weeks of the season. If Wentz is going to miss a couple weeks, getting off to let's say a 1-4, 0-5 start, I just don't see it happening for them this year. Poor Eagle fans. You guys were so excited that you were going to get a first-round pick, and not going to happen.
Well, especially if Wentz misses, because there's a clause in there. He has to play 60% of the snaps.
70% of the snaps.
Oh, it's 60 with the playoff win, 70 without, or something like that, isn't it?
I think it's 70 with a playoff. It's 75 without.
All right, but 70, there's no way.
There's no way.
And we're 2 weeks in, and we're saying no way he's going to make that play that many snaps. But anyway,
but we're talking about the Titans. Even with that weak schedule, you don't know how far they'll advance into the playoffs if they just got in off basically a technicality on the
division.
Yeah.
But
the thing is, the Titans they can be one of those teams that's really scary in the playoffs. We saw this literally play out in 2019, right? Like, they were a wild card team, and they beat, was it the Patriots in round 1 in Foxborough? Then they go to Baltimore and beat the Ravens. Like, they've got this formula where if Henry's running really well, and Tannehill is good enough in the play action game to make big plays, they're a really scary team for some top contenders in the AFC. But I agree with you. I don't think there shouldn't be a top 4 or top 5 team in the AFC. But I wouldn't rule them out making a little bit of a run in the playoffs either.
It's hard to count out King Henry.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is, right? Especially in January. It's a tough player to count out.
Yes. So, can Derek Carr keep up this pace, though, of him putting up 400-plus yards a game?
So basically, are you asking me if he's gonna, total like 6,500 yards this year and
he intact, right? It's like while he's going up, right?
I mean, I think there's a chance that he just sets career highs across the board. I just keep coming back to this. Every year he's played under John Gruden, he's gotten better. He's completely comfortable in this offense, and Gruden has designed an offense that makes a lot of sense for him, right? Like, the knock on Carr coming out of college and early on in his careers, oh, he's a dink and dunk quarterback. So what did they do? They got him the best dink and dunk weapons in football in Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow, who I think is one of the best slot receivers. Yeah. So it does feel like this is a very repeatable thing that the Raiders can do on offense, and I don't know how teams stop it, especially if they start running the ball better with Josh Jacobs when he gets healthy.
The one team that I could see stopping them just because of the players that they've drafted is my Broncos. Just because if Surtain is the tight end stopper that everybody says he is, the Raiders are toast. Not toast, but it's hard. It'd be very hard for that offense to roll against the Broncos cornerbacks and that front seven, even with Jewel out for the year.
I will say Derek Carr has had a lot of success, though, against the Broncos over the last couple of years. Like, he's got that defense figured out where if Vic Fangio wants to send pressure, bring it on. Like, he loves getting blitzed because he can dump it off to the running backs. He can take a shot downfield to Henry Ruggs one-on-one. But I do think you're right. That's the one team that has the personnel to maybe match up with their weapons. Should be some fun battles between the Raiders and Broncos coming up this year.
Oh, yeah. The question I had for you, the one surprise I had for the Raiders this last week was how bad Kenyon Drake looked.
He looked like he was running in mud, didn't he?
I don't know if you agree. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when Peyton Barber looks better, I take notice, right? And
it was evident right away that Drake just looks washed. I mean, he honestly looks like he was running in mud in that entire game. And Peyton Barber comes in, and listen, I don't think anybody thinks Peyton Barber is like a twitched up running back or anything, but it was noticeable. Like, Barber hit the hole harder. He got down and made plays after contact. Drake is not an inside runner at all. So if you got a guy that doesn't want to run inside and kind of lacks the speed and the twitchiness that you need to make plays on the outside, what do we have here? And it makes me wonder, like, when Jalen Richard comes back from his foot injury, are they just going to roll with Richard again as the third down back and Josh Jacobs as the between the tackle guy? Because I have not been impressed at all from what I've seen from Kenyon Drake.
Yeah.
No. You're gonna say something?
No, go ahead.
Well, they also, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they give Drake a 2-year, $8 million contract this past summer?
It was 2 years with $11 million guaranteed. So they invested a lot of money in Kenyon Drake. I believe it's like top 15 running back money, which isn't insignificant when you already drafted Josh Jacobs. I got a feeling the Raiders are feeling a little bit of buyer's remorse there because it kind of looks like he's washed.
And you were, I think, right to point out that how good of job Gruden's done, considering how many picks they've missed on. I don't want to drag anybody, but they had Khalil Mack, and they would undo that trade in a heartbeat. They had Amari Cooper, they would undo that trade in a heartbeat. I mean, but considering, and Derek Carr would love to have Cooper to throw to, but I don't know. I have to give Gruden credit. I mean, instead of going the negative side on how they've missed on picks, their lack of talent for what Gruden's gotten out of them is pretty apparent.
Yeah, I mean, they were 6-3 last year, and they were, one play away from beating the Chiefs twice. Like this, Gruden gets these guys to play at a ridiculously high level, despite I think being at a talent disadvantage almost every single week. So, man, the drafts could have been better, and you could just play the what if game all the time. But it's good. It's a good little team that Gruden has playing here. I think they're playing above their heads. We'll see how long they can do it.
They do that most years, though, because you mentioned that they were 6-3 last year, and they've been playing that way for the past 2 or 3 years, and then it just kind of falls apart. But with the defense, that's always been the weakness. They might be able to not collapse.
Yeah, I mean, I think the upgrade from Paul Gunther to Gus Bradley is certainly a good one. My problem with their defense is the same problem they've had the last few years. They just don't have a lot of depth. And we know in the NFL, you're not going to keep all 11 starters or 13 of your top 15 defenders healthy all year long. So when we get into November and December and you're down 6 starters in a game against Denver, can you stop anybody? It's been my question the whole time. We come back to this. No, the personnel decisions by Gruden. Man, they had a game in week 1. They had 5 first-round picks from 2019 to 2020. Only one of those guys was playing in Henry Ruggs. That's pretty awful for all those draft picks that you spent. It's a bit concerning. I'm still a little bit worried about some of their late season problems.
Do you think GM other than Mike Mayock would be doing a lot better of a job drafting them?
I mean, I think you could literally go buy a magazine at your local Walmart and pick a player, and you probably would do better than Mike Mayock and John Gruden. And I'm not exaggerating at all. Like,
no.
Some of the picks that they made, or the players that were there, were so obvious, right? Like with 2019, they needed a linebacker so bad, and Devin White is staring at them in the face at number 4, and yet they take Cleveland Farrell, who is a healthy scratch in week 1 of 2021. They needed a receiver so badly, and CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy both fall to them to number 12. And yet they pick Henry Ruggs, who most people had as the 3rd or 4th receiver in the draft. Like, they just made these dumb mistakes over and over again, and it's really starting to cost them when it comes to their depth, and there's just overall talent on the team.
But even one thing I've learned in the fantasy community really quick is that the community usually knows what they're talking about, because everybody was on the hype train for Lamar Jackson. Then it was Josh Allen. Then it's Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
All 3 of those guys have broken out.
They've done okay.
They know what they're doing. Yeah. So do these people who are making the draft boards for these NFL teams. Mike Mayock tries to outsmart them.
I think we all think, Rhys, that we all have this inherent part that we think we're smarter than everyone else. And, let's trade Amari Cooper away for a first-round pick and then use a first-round pick on Henry Ruggs. I mean, like, other than salary, it doesn't really. Sorry, Marcus, I cut you off there, but
no, that's fine. Even us fantasy or dynasty owners back in 2013 were so excited about Cordero Patterson, starting to prove that we're right. Like, how many years did we say Cordero Patterson's a running back? Let's finally use him that way. And now he scored 23 PPR points. I'm kind of just kidding about Patterson, but right. I do agree with you, Rhys. I think dynasty owners, fantasy football players are some of the smartest football fans out there because they watch these guys in college. They see how the skills would translate to the NFL. And they do, I mean, their hit rate for the most part is pretty good. I would say at the very least, it's on par with what the NFL does. So I think that it's a very wise thing you've noticed there.
Especially with positional value. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that Mayock's missed on, but that's just me.
No, I mean that's absolutely true. In 2019, they took a running back and a box safety in the first round. Like those are two no-nos that you just don't do in the NFL, and they did it. So that is one thing where I think Mayock and Gruden are a little bit old school. I wish they would kind of talk to some analytics people, talk to some better roster builders to find out how to best draft for a team.
So speaking, transitioning to your other team, the Cowboys, how do you envision the Pollard Zeke dynamic to work out? You mentioned them having the hot hand, but
I don't know what gives you the impression that I'm a Cowboy guy. Is it the 3 Cowboy jerseys directly behind me in this video?
something.
Something. I think this is going to be a committee. Now, I don't think it's going to be as 50-50 split as we saw it in week 2. I just think that happened to be a game plan where Tony Pollard was running well. I think they thought they could expose their linebackers. I think it's going to be very matchup dependent. For example, I think this week 3 game against the Eagles is going to be a Ezekiel Elliott heavy game plan because the Eagles have a good pass rush. The Cowboys are still a little bit worried about their right tackle, so I think you're going to see a lot of Zeke, especially on passing downs. But the days of Ezekiel Elliott getting 25 touches and Pollard 3, they're over. And because how could they not be over when Tony Pollard's running this well, right? Like you can't keep that guy off the field when he creates a big play like every other run. But I think a 60-40 split feels very, very likely from now on.
What do you see them doing with the passing game? Do you think it's just going to be whoever's on the field, or they purposely make switches?
I mean, the one thing that Kellen Moore, the Cowboys offensive coordinator, has been very clear about is they're going to be a week to week game plan team. They're not this Jason Garrett of old team where, hey, we do what we do and it's up to the other team to stop us. Like after the game against the Chargers, he said, our game plan is to aggressively take what the defense gives us. And I really like that, right? So if teams are doubling Amari Cooper, why throw to him? You've got a really good receiver on the other side in CeeDee Lamb. If the teams are playing cover 2 and daring you to run the ball or to throw it to the tight ends, I don't think they have any problem doing that at all. So I think it's going to be a very balanced passing attack with the targets spread out all over the place. And I just think that makes the most sense from the Cowboys and from a team building perspective.
Yes.
I wanted to get your take. I saw he didn't give her any targets, but who looked good for me in that game was Cedric Wilson. The play he made on his, I'd say, bigger catch. I thought he looked really, and he's looked good over the past years in small doses. I mean, he looks to me to be the heir apparent to Gallup, but that's just me. But I wanted to get your take on Cedric Wilson and also the debate. I don't think it's a debate, but I'll pitch it to you like it's one. Jarwin or Schultz?
So first of all, let's touch on Cedric Wilson. I do think he's the heir apparent, but I would also be a little bit cautious with that because his contract is also up in this offseason. The Cowboys don't have a lot of cap space this, in 2022. So if Wilson performs well over the next 4 or 5 weeks, it's not unreasonable to think that a team might go out there and give him $6 million a year. Or maybe he even gets the Nelson Aguilar deal that we saw the Patriots give. If that's the case, then Dallas won't be keeping Cedric Wilson. But over the next 4 or 5 weeks, I think you could absolutely slot him in your lineup as a what-the-heck flex, to steal that from our guy, Cecil Lammey and Sigmund Bloom. Yeah. I think he's a really nice player. Now, the tight end thing is a little interesting. Jarwin is pretty clearly the big play guy. But I think Schultz is the more reliable player. Like, he had just an incredible grab this week against the Chargers. I think Dak trusts him. I think he trusts him to get open. He's the better blocker. He's the guy that I would bet long-term having a more productive fantasy career than Blake Jarwin.
Especially after Jarwin. We mentioned Zeke. And after week 1, if Jarwin gets that block, we're not talking about Zeke. Yep.
And that's the thing is they trust Schultz a lot more in all those situations. So when it's, they're in 11 personnel at the 5-yard line, it's going to be Schultz and not Jarwin. And that matters when it comes to red zone opportunities, touchdowns, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. So, how do you see the Raiders' backfield moving forward? Does Jacobs just take a lot more prominent role? Does Drake take a back seat to Barber? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Jeff and I were talking about this the other day. I don't think I don't think Jacobs is going to miss a ton of time, but I don't think he's going to play this week. I think he's just really beat up. There's no one injury that's really causing him to miss time. Like it's not a knee injury or a foot injury. His body's just beat up, and he got beat up hard in that Ravens game. So I do think after this week he'll be back. He's just their best running back, and I think the Raiders want to find ways to get him on the field and get him touches. He's really, really good in the red zone. I think in any game where it's close and it's within, let's say, 10 points, Jacobs is going to be on the field outside of a couple passing situations. Jacobs is going to get, I would say, 75% of the workload in this backfield.
In the conversation he's talking about is after Jacobs, I was like, he's missing week 3. He's missing week 3 just because. Well, the only reason is we see patterns. Those of us that are old and we've seen this happen before, we know what's coming. I mean, like it wasn't. And so all I was telling fantasy people is Jacob's not playing in week 3. Now I probably was too strong on it because I didn't want.
I think you're right, though. I think you're going to be right.
But I didn't want to be a hot take guy. I don't mind being the smart aleck guy. I just don't want to be the hot take guy. There's plenty of those guys.
I think you're right. I don't think he's going to play week 3, but I think we're both right in this situation.
Yeah.
I just think it's not a long-term injury to be concerned about where it's going to linger, but he might miss a week or two. And I think John Gruden and the coaching staff has a long-term view in mind here. Like, yes, it's important to win early season games, but we want Josh Jacobs healthy for when we make the playoffs. And that's the way they're thinking. Like they believe they're going to make the playoffs and they're going to make a run. They want to make sure he's ready to go by January.
Yep. And I'm all for that. I just see certain things and I'm like, fancy guys, let's start making adjustments now.
Yep.
Does Josh Jacobs deserve a second contract?
Man, already with the tough questions here, Rhys. So we're what? Year 3 of Josh Jacobs? I mean, you're probably asking the wrong guy here because I don't think any running back deserves a second contract. So I would say no, just based on durability. And he's taken a lot of punishment, so probably not. But how can you justify paying Kenyon Drake and not Josh Jacobs? That's the part that I don't really understand.
That's why it's a good question.
That's why I try to get out of it.
But you can tag him in year 5 because he's a first-round pick, right?
Yes.
You can.
Well, he has the 5th year. He's got the 5th year option, right? So that ties him to 2020, 23, right?
Yep. And then you could tag him in the 6th year and let him walk from there. And because if you're paying him, you're probably paying him those dollars anyway. You know what I'm saying? So you can have him for those 6 years, and that's probably the length of his career.
I just, man, any of these running backs after year 5 and especially after year 6, I don't want to pay these guys. Like, who's the last guy to get a second contract and get to year 6 and year 7 and still be worth the money that the team's paying him? Because I can't think of an example off the top of my head.
He's counting.
Derek Henry.
So we're in year, what, 6 now, Derek Henry?
I believe so. He was the same draft class as Zeke.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm never going to say a bad word about Derek Henry, so you got me there, Rhys. Good job.
he was over here doing,
Yeah, that's all right. That's a good one. You like I said, you're never going to get me to say a bad word about Derek Henry. He might be just the unicorn out there that just continues to get better as he ages.
Or he's one injury away. I mean, every NFL player is one injury away. We can't lose sight of that. And
that's the thing with running backs. When you're taking 370 hits, actually more than that when you factor in, pass blocking stuff and receiving stuff, 370 hits is going to pile up over the years. So, yeah, I think that's what's so dangerous about that running back position.
Especially with Henry's running style being a lot more physical than some of the other backs like Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, Mick or McCaffrey.
Yeah, as long as Derek Henry just doesn't get tackled, he should be fine.
No, the defenders want to.
And on the Cowboys though, them being strapped for cash in the their team building, it's going to be really interesting to see how they prioritize the next few years because of the Jalen Smith. What did they do with him? What did they do with Van Der Esch? I'm not trying to bring up stuff. I'm just saying they have guys they have to pay, and they have these guys that they want to get rid, that they're stuck with, even Zeke. And it's just going to be interesting to watch this all play out. That's all I was getting at. I wasn't trying to.
Sure, that's exactly sure. It's exactly what you're trying to do. Bring up painful memories. So,
if we wanted to, we just bring up Jalen Ramsey.
Oh man! You might as well just bring up the Cowboys passing on Randy Moss. Just go ahead and do it all.
Hey, Marcus, this is what I live with. He just sits there in the weeds.
It's just needles and just twist that knife behind your back, right?
If you're going to mention Moss, you have to remember his rookie season, Thanksgiving Day.
3 for 163 and 3. Is that the one you're referring to?
Oh man, I remember being at a relative's house watching that game because I drafted this guy on my fantasy team. It was long before Dynasty. Sorry, Marcus.
No, I just want to say that my turkey that day tasted a little saltier as the tears were coming down my eyes as I was a 9-year-old at the kitchen table. So, yeah, it's extremely really fun.
I will say, what the NFL does great, and I mean this like macro wise, is I don't care which teams are up, which teams are down. You could change the jerseys, the teams, the coaches, the players. We always have something to talk about because they do such a great job. The NFL, you look at the NBA, you look at the other sports, and I charter this back to Pete Rozelle back in the old days, and he really focused on the fans' experience, of how at the game. And, we can debate the taunting, we can debate all this other stuff, and I don't care. I just meant we got to give kudos to Goodell and the NFL players as well for putting out a great product year in, year out.
Yeah, I mean, both of my jobs, Locked On Cowboys, the podcast, and the Raiders Wire, the whole idea is we're covering the news 24/7, 365. Like, we're writing 7 or 8 posts on the Raiders Wire every single day, and that's through the summer when there's nothing going on about the NFL, about the Raiders, the news. The NFL has done a great job of making this a year-long league. I don't think any other league is like that at all. I think the NBA is probably the closest. They're getting there, but nothing compares to the NFL.
Besides the Ben Simmons stuff, what's been out since August 29th?
Nothing. I've seen a couple LeBron workout videos, and that's just about it, right?
Yeah. But you also have to think, here's the stat that gets me on the NFL versus the NBA, Marcus. The NFL draft had way more fans watching it than the NBA playoffs. Like, if that doesn't speak volumes, you know what I'm saying? Because the draft was on NFL Network. It wasn't even on like great networks compared to the NBA anyway.
Yeah, it's not on ABC or whatever it is, right? Like,
no, and even on Christmas, when they went up head to head.
Oh gosh, yeah. Football's king, and it's always going to be king, right? There's just something about the games, every game being so meaningful. The people's fandom is just so tied into this league that's why you get people going crazy about the drafts, and we can still bring up our draft memories from 1998 that still haunt us to this day. So it's quite a sport that we're covering here.
It's awesome.
So I believe this is Pollard's 3rd year, right?
Yes.
Where does he go after year 4? Does he stay with the Cowboys, or does some team like the Seahawks sign him?
So there's no way that the Cowboys can afford to pay 2 running backs, right? Because they'll still be paying Ezekiel Elliott by the time Tony Pollard's contract is up. So yeah, I think he's probably going to leave in free agency. Now we're projecting a couple years out, but I would think any team that plays like in a dome or on a fast field would want somebody like Pollard, somebody where they can just utilize him in the passing game, utilize him in the wide zone. I think the Saints make sense. Like if they move on from Alvin Kamara in a couple years, the Vikings make sense. Another dome team. I'm more curious to see, like, as we get into Pollard's last year, like in 2022, the Cowboys know they're not going to be able to re-sign him. Do they try to trade him during the season to try to pick up some value? Or do they just kind of ride it out and let him hit free agency? I think that's going to be an interesting subplot that we'll have to follow next year.
Do you want to know what I would do? Not knowing their cap is detailed as everyone else, I tried to lock him up this year, give him a little bit of a raise, backload the contract to after Zeke leaves, and lock him up for a 4-year deal, backloaded the last 2 after Zeke, you're out from under Zeke.
Yeah, it's exactly what we need to do. Pay more running backs here, Jeff. I see what you're trying to do. Just load us up on cap. But I actually agree with you. I agree
I
with
mean
you.
at like 4 or 5 million a year. I don't mean at 6 or 8. I just mean at 4
Not
or 5.
Not Naheem Hines money.
Yeah, not Naheem. I just mean like
That I think you're right though. Like, however, the time to probably do that was this offseason, right? Like before you get into the year. But at the same time, maybe Pollard doesn't want to sign a deal. Like maybe he's going to go to free agency and be like, look, I don't have the workload that Ezekiel Elliott has. I didn't get a ton of work in college. I didn't get a ton of work in the NFL. I'm very productive. I'm efficient. Pay me like a top 10 running back, some team. And inevitably, there'll be a team out there that does it. Like we saw Jerick McKinnon get a huge deal from the 49ers. I don't know about you guys, but I think Pollard's a better player than Jerick McKinnon. If he just waits the next year and a half, I think he can get a pretty sizable deal.
Pollard's a lot better than Naheem Hines, who
I agree.
Who got what, $6 million a year? And all I meant though is if the Cowboys offered him that, now, and they back ended.
I just don't think he would take it. I honestly don't know if he would take it. I think you're right. That would be the smart move by Dallas to lock him up now and make sure that you have an explosive guy in the backfield. I just wonder if Pollard knows he can get more on the open market. Maybe he just wants his own team where he can be the lead guy. I think we can't rule that out either.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying. I'm just saying that even if you give him a 2-year extension now, that you give him more money, it's kind of like what the Packers did with Jordy Nelson.
Yes.
Is they locked him up way early, gave him money because he wasn't making very much. That the amount more he's making, this year and next offsets what the discount he's given in the next 2 years.
A little bit like the Raheem Mostert deal that the 49ers did. Was it last year? Somewhat similar to that.
Yeah. 2 destination spots for Tony Pollard that I was thinking about. Arizona.
Oh, that would be great. Wouldn't that be great?
Or the Chiefs, just because that's going to be CEH's 3rd year, going into his 4th year. And if he keeps on showing like he did these past 19 games, is he really going to be worth that much? Is he and Pollard, one's going to be a lot more valuable than the other?
It's really funny that you bring up CEH and Tony Pollard because literally today I got offered CEH for Tony Pollard in a dynasty league. And I haven't responded yet.
I passed.
What do you do? That's kind of my thing is like CH has proved not to be durable. He's not all that efficient. He's not getting the targets that we were kind of promised coming out of the draft. So what's the upside here? I don't know. He is the most interesting player in dynasty football to me right now.
All right, I have one for you. He or Melvin Gordon? Do you want
Pollard?
CEH or Gordon?
Oh.
I would take CEH because you do think eventually the Broncos are going to go to Javonte Williams. It's just when. Gordon's probably going to be more valuable this year, but I would rather have CEH. I think.
Yeah, getting 8 touches a game, in suboptimal situations and unable to make a guy miss and
unable to score.
Yeah, but anyway.
Man, what a fall for CEH. Last year, we had people on some prominent networks saying to draft him number 1 overall in your redraft leagues.
It wasn't me.
No, it wasn't you. I'm not going to mention who it was, but there's some people on big networks telling you to draft him number 1. And now we're talking about should you trade him for a backup running back in Dallas. Just incredible.
Or worse, Melvin Gordon, right? At the twilight of
Melvin Gordon. There you go. Yes.
The smart aleck part of me says, well, CEH did produce more than Christian McCaffrey did.
Man, last year?
Yeah, last year, number 1.
I guess that was a moot point.
That's how I would be. If I had CEH right now, that's how I would be telling all my other league mates. Like, hey, listen, this guy's produced, outproduced Christian McCaffrey over the last 2 years. Why not take him?
Since he's been in the league.
Since he's been drafted, he's outproduced them, right?
I'm actually not sure now, because does CEH have the 150 points that McCaffrey has over the past 5 games?
It's probably pretty close. You're right.
But could Pollard also go to a team like Seattle with Carson? Is this his 5th year now in the league?
I think Carson's 5th or 6th. I think he's towards the twilight of his career too.
So I think you're right by picking out some teams that have some very old school thinking, right? Some dinosaur coaches like Pete Carroll who still believe running backs matter. I think that's a really good one. I'm trying to think of some other guys that have some
Atlanta.
old.
Arthur Smith, Atlanta.
Oh, there you go. That's actually a good fit, right? Like I could see that one considering their talent level. Like they just don't have anybody there. You pair them with Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts. That one makes a lot of sense, more so than Seattle, I think.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, but Atlanta, don't get me started. They should have traded Matt Ryan last offseason. You could debate whether they should have taken a quarterback at 4, but I look at their personnel moves and I think they're like that guy that stays in a relationship a month too long, still thinking that they have a chance. And this, we all knew they had no chance. We all knew they were going to pick in the top 5 next year. And so, Bloom loves Kyle Pitts, right? I mean, you see his eyes just glimmer. But I'm just saying, would you rather have Fields there? Maybe his Broncos probably would rather have Fields.
Don't twist that knife.
But I just meant though, what would the 49ers have given for Matt Ryan? Would they have traded up for Lance? I don't know. And I still think Matt Ryan has a lot to give. The things that keep you up late at night, Marcus. The one is, to me, is how does Arthur Smith leave the Titans and go to the Falcons and both offenses go down?
It's very interesting. This is an offseason from the Falcons that I think they're really going to want back because they were really sitting in the driver's seat. Like they had so many options available to them. Like if they wanted to trade Matt Ryan, like if they just made it known to the world, hey, we're going to move Matt Ryan, and it's not going to cost you 2 first-round picks like it cost Matt Stafford. It's not even going to cost you a first-round pick like it cost the Colts to go get Carson Wentz. I'm sure they could have moved him, right? There's teams out there. I mean, listen, if you're the Colts, would you rather have Matt Ryan or Carson Wentz? Because I think I would rather have Matt Ryan behind that offensive line, right? Even though the age, I mean, you were sitting in a spot where you had so many options, and I'm sure they had trade offers. Like we saw multiple trades inside the top 10. We saw Miami trade back up to number 6. I'm sure they could have came up all the way to number 4 and got Jamar Chase if they wanted to, or get Kyle Pitts, or you just slide back down, you take another weapon, or you take Rashawn Slater or Penei Sewell and improve your offensive line, or you pick a quarterback, which is what they should have done. It's just, I love Kyle Pitts. I know our guy Sigmund is a huge fan, and so am I. I don't think there's anybody bigger fans of Kyle Pitts in the world than us, but you had a chance to grab a franchise quarterback or to make a franchise-altering trade, and you did neither. And I think it's going to be something that Falcon fans are really bummed about over the next couple of years.
The other team that should have made a trade, just to trade or grab a quarterback and then move on from theirs, was the Lions. They were in an ample opportunity to draft Justin Fields and flip Jared Goff for another first or two to a quarterback needy team, like before Fitzpatrick signed the football team, or one of those types of teams.
Do you think that's still in the plans or a possibility for the Lions? Because honestly, what I've seen from Jared Goff in the first 2 games of the season is he's competent enough. Like there's certainly teams where he would be an upgrade. And if he has a nice season and he finishes, let's say, I don't know, he's the 19th best quarterback in the league. That contract gets a lot more manageable after this year. And maybe a team like Washington would be open to trading for him then when he costs a lot less. So I wouldn't rule out the Lions still doing that. I just think they needed to kind of do one hard reset year. And then maybe next year is about going in and finding the quarterback, whether it's Sam Howell at North Carolina, whether it's Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma. I think that's the plan there in Detroit.
But I'd rather have Fields than Rattler.
Well, of course. But you have Patrick Surtain, so you don't need to worry about it.
Well, we have Patrick Surtain, you're right. But you guys got Micah Parsons.
I still would trade it for Surtain. Listen, this is the positional value show, right?
Yeah.
Micah Parsons, I think, is going to be a really, really good player. He might even be the best linebacker in the league 3 years from now. But if Patrick Surtain is a top 10 corner, he's just inherently going to have more value. And I know the Cowboys didn't have the opportunity to pick Surtain, but if they did, I think that would have been the better pick.
Yeah. The interesting conversation I have for you guys, you all were mentioning Goff and Fitz. Here's one for you. Who would you rather have, Goff or Wentz?
Goff.
Yeah, I think I would. One at least stays healthy. Yeah.
All right. You roll down this. If Goff is better than Wentz, that means Goff's a top 20 quarterback, because there's usually 10 or 12 that languish at the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just think about all those teams that are in no man's land, that we just think of like, what are they doing? I mean, how about the Giants with Daniel Jones? How about, you mentioned the football team.
Yeah. I got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
How about the Steelers?
Oh, man. I think they are the kind of team that would give up a pick for Matt Ryan.
Oh, easy.
I did see something that was crazy. They had the youngest offense minus quarterback this weekend. Did you see that? Did you see that?
Yeah, I mean, they're starting 2 rookies on the offensive line, a rookie tight end, a rookie running back, and the offense is awful. And it's so apparent that Ben Roethlisberger is cooked. And there's going to be games where this is going to come back to bite me, where he plays well and it's fine, it's whatever. But you know what's so obvious to me is watching that game on Sunday. Like, here's Derek Carr, who is making plays down the field. He's creating value for his offense. And Roethlisberger just can't do that anymore. Like, he's so detrimental to that team that I don't know what the plan is. Like, I honestly wonder at some point in the year if the Steelers won't look in the mirror and say, you know what, Mason Rudolph, he just has a better arm. He's more willing to throw the ball down the field. We know he's not our franchise quarterback, but does he give us a better chance at winning? Maybe. It's been in the last 9 games of Ben Roethlisberger's regular season, he's averaging 5.6 adjusted yards per attempt. That's the worst in the NFL by a mile. Yeah. At some point, you've just got to admit that it's over and move on. And I'm curious to see when the Steelers do that.
But the thing with Tomlin is Ben Roethlisberger has been there longer than Tomlin has. Mm-hmm. So you don't know if Roethlisberger has any sentimental value to Tomlin at all, and that's why they have not moved on from him.
Now let's be honest. The team, count the Steelers among your Cowboys and a lot of other teams that should have pursued Gardner Minshew for as cheap as he was.
I mean, a 6th-round pick. That's it.
Yeah, but I meant the Cowboys should have given a 5th. I mean, if the difference is to get the deal done, Steelers should have offered a 4th. I mean, because Minshew could be their starter for the future. He wasn't that bad. There's a lot of teams. I mean, how about Washington? Seattle? Geno Smith is his backup. They're not winning 2 games with Geno Smith.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of teams out there that should have made that move. And I think especially for teams where the offense doesn't have to carry them, and if you just need a quarterback to be like a C-, it makes a ton of sense. I don't get why the Steelers weren't active in that. We saw Dwayne Haskins in preseason. He looked like Dwayne Haskins, right? Like he looks bad. Mason Rudolph, it continues to be Mason Rudolph. I just don't get why he didn't go for more in a trade.
Yeah, and he cheap contract because he was. I mean, he was super cheap contract wise. So even like Cowboys,
2 cheap years. Yep.
I meant though he's cheaper than Cooper Rush.
Yeah, exactly. He's cheaper than Garrett Gilbert and all those guys that they kept. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But that's also a poor management job on the Jaguars. Urban Meyer only trading him for a 6th when he has. There's an argument to be made that he's a top 32 quarterback in this league.
Oh, I think that's an easy argument. Yes. Don't you think, Marcus?
I think so, but I mean, this isn't even in the top 10 of things that Urban has done wrong already in Jacksonville, so we shouldn't spend too much time on it.
They're free agency. You have the most.
Oh my gosh!
And then you're not going to use it?
Yeah,
the good thing is in a total rebuild. At least you took a running back that's. You already had I don't even want to get into Jacksonville. It's so frustrating. Urban won't be there very long. He doesn't need to worry about it. So.
No.
Maybe they can hire someone like John Gruden.
Oh. There you go. Oh man, what do you think Jacksonville fans are thinking about that now? Like, man, we could have had John Gruden. I mean, an actual good coach, but oh boy, things are not looking great in Florida right now.
Almost like how Broncos fans are looking back would be very unhappy to realize that we chose Vance Joseph over Kyle Shanahan as our head coach.
Ouch.
That one doesn't eat at you at all, does it?
No, not at all.
I'm not bitter.
Rockets have had quite a few questionable management decisions.
Yeah.
Listen, at the very least, you didn't spend a decade of your life having to watch Jason Garrett. I promise you, it can't get worse than that.
Hey, when I see him with the Giants, when I see him on the Giants, I think Jason Garrett and Daniel Jones is like
a match made in heaven.
No. Only if you're a Cowboys fan.
They're perfect for each other, Dad.
Oh man.
I've got an analogy that I can't use in this show, but yes, it's exactly what you guys are thinking about.
So speaking of Daniel Jones, what do you think of like how he performed on Thursday Night Football against a supposed top defense? Keep in mind that defense shut down. Don't want to say shut down, but they stopped the Chargers pretty well on the previous Sunday.
I thought Daniel Jones played the best game of his career. Now, I would put it into a little bit of context. The one thing that Jason Garrett has done over the course of his career as a coach is he's been really good at game planning for divisional opponents. And we've seen that with Daniel Jones in his career. Like over the last 2 years, his passer rating against the NFC East is like 98. Against non-NFC East opponents, it's like in the low 70s. So it's not surprising that Daniel Jones does play well in these games. But it's pretty clear he's talented. They've got more weapons. I'm curious to see how they look in the next couple of weeks because I think I'm intrigued by Daniel Jones in year 3 because, listen, Rhys, after 2 years of Josh Allen, we kind of thought he was a bust, right? Like we thought, this isn't going to work. He took this big athletic guy. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm not saying Daniel Jones is going to be Josh Allen, but he does have some similarities in their career arc so far. So just keep an eye on that.
The one that gets me is why'd they get Tony in the first? I mean, a team full of holes. And you know what I'm saying? Because they spend big money on Galladay, who we could debate that either way. Shepard's decent. They signed Kyle Rudolph.
Darius Slayton's a good player. You didn't need to go out and just use Darius Slayton. He's fine.
Exactly.
Offensive line help, please.
Offensive line.
Go get an offensive lineman. Yes. You were sitting in a perfect position to take Rashawn Slater. Like you traded out of that spot, and I get it. You picked up an extra first-round pick, but the entire goal once you pick a quarterback is to maximize that window, right? Like this is a franchise left tackle who just fell to you at number 12. It's a gift. Giants, take it. Use him. He would have been great in that for that team, and yet now they're probably going to be searching for offensive linemen next year with that additional first-round pick they picked up. We're back to square one for the Giants.
So, question for both of you: Do the Giants give Jones a second contract?
You kind of have.
Yes, most teams you kind of have to, right?
Yeah.
But then you're stuck in that quandary of just being okay, And so, I mean, I don't think Taylor and Heineke's that much worse.
We'll know after this year, one way or the other. Like if Daniel Jones doesn't get any better, they should make a move. But if he at least see improvement, let's say he's the 17th best quarterback in the league, and he gets the Giants' offense from 31st, which it was last year, to 18th. That's when at least you can justify saying, "Hey, he's making progress. Let's continue to see this out." But I don't know if I see that happening.
But even on that draft that you were talking about, even when they traded back, they're still in a great position to draft Christian Darrisaw, the left tackle or right tackle from Virginia Tech, who was a really good college player. I haven't seen his film in the pros, but there was still that gift waiting for you.
Or trade back further and take like Elijah Moore, who was there in the second round. Like, if you're going to do this trading back thing, there's not a difference, at least in my mind, between like Kadarius Toney and Elijah Moore and some of the Rondale Moore, who we're seeing have a big game. Like you could have just taken that guy in the second round. Like go full out in loading up for next year's draft, just in case you do need to go get a quarterback.
And I love Terrace Marshall and Rashad Bateman, who
perfect. Yes,
those two would have looked great in Giants, big guys. Anyway,
Marcus Mosher, you have more receiving yards in the NFL than Kadarius Toney.
I've been working on my game, Rhys. Haven't you noticed?
more yards after the catch too.
Yeah, but
I mean,
2 yards.
I know I don't look it, but I'm explosive after the catch.
That's what fatherhood does to you.
It's true. You get some of that dad strength, and you're just unstoppable in the open field.
Oh yeah. Well, Marcus, thank you for joining us. We've enjoyed it. We hope you'll join us here in another month or so. And we always enjoy talking football with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Oh, it was awesome.
Bye.